Thank you for coming. Those of you who were here last time know, but if not, my name is John Meese. I'm sort of one of the co-organizers of this semi-organized event. My wife Rachel is actually here this evening joining us. But I'm a lifetime member of the BitCoin Foundation. I've been interested in Bitcoin for a few years now, this is something that I'm just really excited that other people are interested in too now. So, majored in economics, so that's where my interest comes in. And you can also find me online at johnrmeese.com or on Twitter at johnrmeese. So, I'm here to talk about sort of the other side of the coin from what Luke was talking about, which was advice about what to do with your Bitcoin as far as storing them in paper wallets. And I'm going to try to keep this a little brief, but I wanted to talk about a few details about why you should not ever store any significant amount of Bitcoin on an online exchange. Especially, well, not just online exchanges, but that's the primary cause we find for what's known as off-blockchain accounts. And I'll explain that a little bit. So just a little background for those of you that haven't been keeping up with Bitcoin news. Right now there's a lot of drama surrounding Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox is one of, if not the oldest, well, it is the oldest major Bitcoin exchange where you can buy and sell Bitcoin for a long time. That was actually where I bought my first Bitcoin years ago. I haven't had an account there for more than a year, but it's been there for a long time. Fun fact, the website MTGOX was actually originally purchased by the owner to form a website called Magic the Gathering Online Exchange. And then Bitcoin came out, and so he used the same domain. So everyone started calling it Mt. Gox. But it's been around for a while. There's a lot of questions about the not the legality of the business, but just some of the ethics in response to how they react to the Bitcoin community and sort of various different things. The issue recently has been that they've actually, in a sense, frozen Bitcoin accounts on their exchange, so that you can't, even if you have an account on there and you think you own Bitcoin on your Mt. Gox wallet, you can't actually send that Bitcoin anywhere. You have to let it sit there. And so that's causing a lot of issue right now. In fact, the price on Mt. Gox has now fallen to, I think, earlier this week it was like 300 or lower for one Bitcoin, which is not accurate, because the accurate price right now, the global average is roughly $650 a Bitcoin. The reason why it's so cheap is because people know if you're buying Bitcoin at Mt. Gox right now, you're taking a huge risk, because you can't send that Bitcoin to anywhere outside of Mt. Gox currently. They've announced that they plan to, at some point in the near future, reopen up allow people to buy and sell and send Bitcoin on the Mt. Gox exchange once they resolve some issues on their end. But the primary thing that confused a lot of people is the fact that they were under the impression they owned their Bitcoin, and now all of a sudden realize that they have absolutely no access to those Bitcoin. And that's because Mt. Gox accounts are off-blockchain accounts. And that's different from something like blockchain.info. If you have a wallet on someplace.blockchain.info, you can actually look at every time you send Bitcoin from one wallet to another, a transaction appears on the blockchain in the transaction ledger that shows Bitcoin was sent from this address from wallet A to wallet B. When you send money between accounts on, say, Coinbase or Mt. Gox, then that doesn't appear there because those are off-blockchain accounts. And there are some benefits to that that could be argued. The arguments for that is that it's easier internally for the company themselves. You don't have to worry about miner fees or anything like that. But from a consumer's perspective, it means that you don't actually own your Bitcoin. Even if in fact, recently there's been some complaints that it's quite possible that Mt. Gox is operating essentially a fractional reserve. Which didn't surprise me, because actually I always assumed they were, but some people are really upset by this proposition, because those of you who don't know, fractional reserve banking is the idea that, say for example right now you have $1,000 in your checking account at your local bank. Out of that $1,000, they may only actually have about $100 on hand, and the rest of it they'll loan out to people. And their goal is that they'll make money off of that money that they loan out, which is your money. And they just hope that when you come to get your $1,000 out, they have enough money handy to give you your money. This only works if only 10% or less of all people who are customers of that bank go to withdraw all their money at the same time. This is where historically we had the issue of bank runs, and this is why the FDIC was implemented, where the idea was that bank runs happen and still happen in many countries, but we haven't had one in the US in a while, where a bunch of people would all go and try to get all their money out of the bank at the same time. The bank would say, well, we don't have your money. Even though you may have $10,000 on your account balance, that doesn't actually mean they have $10,000 sitting in a pile of cash in a safe. It means that's what they have on paper that you own, and it's an IOU. The same exact thing happens when you have an account at an exchange like Mt. Gox or Coinbase, or Bitstamp or BTC, or any other major exchange. Now, this doesn't mean that you can never use Mt. Gox or Coinbase or any place like that. I highly recommend no one ever use Mt. Gox, but that's a personal preference. Coinbase, if you were to go on there and buy Bitcoin, and then there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's actually the easiest way, other than maybe local Bitcoins, to buy Bitcoin right now in the US, is through something like Coinbase. When you do that, the important thing is not to keep any sizable amount of Bitcoin in your Coinbase wallet. Coinbase is designed to be an exchange where you can buy and sell Bitcoin, as well as a wallet, and in addition, merchant services. So they're trying to do everything at once right now, which in and of itself is a problem. But the important thing to realize is that if you want to get away from fractional reserve banking, and if you want to have access to all of your money, then you need to use an on-blockchain account. If you cannot view your transactions on the blockchain, if they don't appear in the transaction history, then you have an off-blockchain account. Now, there are some wallets which are operated by more traditional, exchange or financial services type entities. Like one of the newer ones is called CoinKite. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but they're aiming to be sort of like a Bitcoin bank. And so they let you store, have a checking account, savings account, things like that, store Bitcoin there. But they actually keep everything on blockchain. They make that very clear, and they allow you to do what they call an audit, where at any given point you can print out a report of all the addresses where your Bitcoin are stored online. Coinbase, in their recent security update, announced that now that they store 97% of all Bitcoins that their consumers own offline in cold storage. Of course, the plus side of this is that if anyone were to hack into Coinbase somehow, then they can only get out, even if they did it online, they were to hack over, take over Coinbase completely, they could only steal 3% of the Bitcoins that Coinbase owns. They couldn't access the 97% unless they had access to the cold storage. The flip side of that, though, is the fact that those 97%, that means that of your Bitcoin, say you own 100 Bitcoin, if it's on a Coinbase account, then 97% of that is offline. Now, of course, that doesn't mean that you can only take out 3 Bitcoin at a time. If you were to take out 10 Bitcoin and send that somewhere else, then it operates off the same fractional reserve model in that some Bitcoin is taken out of your account, some of it is taken out of Susie's account, some of it is taken out of my wife Rachel's account, and it all comes together and is sent elsewhere. And all that Coinbase does is they simply mark on a piece of paper, well, I mean it's digital, so on their computer, that this person owns this much less Bitcoin. So it's all ledger-based, but it's a very centralized ledger, which is the opposite of the blockchain, which is a decentralized ledger. Another illustration of the difference, just to clarify the difference between on-blockchain and off-blockchain. It's kind of like if you were to, well, the example I gave earlier, I'm trying to remember the exact details, but it was about the difference between, say, eBay and Amazon. If you were to go to eBay and you were to buy and sell things, then you're buying and selling between a bunch of different people who are selling a bunch of different stuff. There's not like one entity that's like, is eBay that's buying and selling all this stuff. eBay is more or less a platform to let you buy and sell things on. And that's like Mt. Gox. Mt. Gox is a platform where you can go and you can sell your Bitcoin or you can buy your Bitcoin. And it's a market exchange. Coinbase is also an exchange. I point this out because when I mentioned that I was going to talk on this, someone asked in the Meetup group why I was referring to Coinbase as an exchange, because you don't buy and sell the same way in Coinbase as you in Mt. Gox. But it's a difference in eBay and Amazon. And on Amazon, there are some merchants who sell in their individual product, but more and more Amazon is moving towards a model of they have warehouses full of goods, and you buy stuff from them, and they're the central entity. And that's what Coinbase does. Coinbase is a central entity that buys a bunch of people's Bitcoin and sells it to a bunch of other people. So ultimately, they're the middleman. I mean, you're still buying and selling between other people that own them. Coinbase themselves doesn't have an enormous stock of Bitcoin. In fact, they actually frequently struggle with keeping up with sales. Coinbase does. I have a couple friends who work for BitPay, and one of the things they told me is that BitPay actually sells a lot of Bitcoin to Coinbase. BitPay is sort of the backup. Whenever Coinbase has more buys than sells, if they have a lot more people trying to buy Bitcoin than are selling Bitcoin at any given moment, the way they make up that difference is they go out and they actually try to buy from other exchanges. However, when you're trying to buy 2,000 Bitcoin at the market price, it's really hard to find a lot of sellers. And so what they've done is they'll go to someone like BitPay, who processes thousands of transactions an hour, and who has huge, vast resources of Bitcoin at their disposal, and Coinbase will actually buy Bitcoin in mass quantities directly from them. When they do that, though, they pay a high premium, so they'll actually end up paying like $2 or $3, if not $4, above market price to buy 2,000 Bitcoin, or whatever it is, just so they can give you the Bitcoin that you just bought. So I say that not to say that I think Coinbase is a terrible company or that they're going to go insolvent, but the risk is always there. And if you keep a lot of money on Coinbase, on your Coinbase account, if they were to go insolvent tomorrow, then all that Bitcoin's gone. You don't own it because it's not on the blockchain. A company like blockchain.info, when you have a wallet online there, then you actually do own that. They intentionally give you the backup information encrypted so that if for whatever reason blockchain.info were to cease to exist, but you could still get access to the blockchain through some exchange or through rather than just a raw download of the blockchain, then you can still access your Bitcoin. So that's just a security caution, a public service announcement, you could call it, as far as why you should never store a lot of money, any sizable amount of Bitcoin on an exchange. Yeah.
Yeah, since most exchanges store off block, if you sent Bitcoin into an exchange and then pulled it back out into a different address, would that be the equivalent of running it through like BitCoin and anonymizing?
The question is, if you were to send your Bitcoin to an exchange and then withdraw it or to a different wallet, would that have the same effect as it would as using I forget what they call them, a third-party mixer, that's the term, a mixer like Bitfog? The answer is, if you look at the blockchain, yes. But if you're going through an entity like Coinbase or like another exchange, then chances are they have some record of that transaction. So although if someone were going to look at the blockchain, they wouldn't be able to tell, like if you were to send Bitcoin to your Coinbase account and then immediately withdraw it to the same account, it may have actually come from, you may have sent it to one address and come from a completely different address, and they may never be connected. Because Coinbase owns hundreds of addresses, if not thousands. So if someone looked at just the blockchain, yes, they wouldn't anonymize the transaction. However, because Coinbase is an institution, chances are they have some centralized records of some form. I don't know the details, but so someone can still access the records that way.
So the NSA or the IRS could demand those records.
Right.
Either through BTCE and maybe in Russia, and then the NSA would be able to get those records.
Right. If you were to go through something like Coinbase, then the NSA or the CIA or whoever could feasibly shut them down or demand to see a copy of the records of everything in your account. That's quite feasible. Also, another important point is the fact that if someone were to shut down Coinbase tomorrow, every Bitcoin you own on a Coinbase account is gone. If it's the government that shut them down, chances are that government's confiscated all of that money. Blockchain, that's a core part of their business model. One of the reasons why they're designed the way they are is that even if the U.S. government or whoever were to go in and seize blockchain.info's assets, they couldn't access your Bitcoin wallet. It's encrypted in your browser. It's encrypted on your end, so they don't actually have access to it. You had a question?
Are most of these companies and facilities American-based or anything offshore?
Most of them are actually offshore. There's not a single major exchange that's U.S.-based. Even Coinbase is UK-based.
Crypto's in Florida.
Okay, Crypto's in Florida, but I don't know if it's can be called a major exchange. It's newer than many.
They're close to getting shut down.
I think it's what? Oh, that's San Francisco.
Yeah,
Well, they have a base in London. Maybe it's not their head. Okay. Well, I knew that they had a base in London, but that may not be their only office. I could be mistaken.
There's another.
There are some exchanges. There are some exchanges in the U.S., but there are far more larger ones in other countries. I mean, BTC is it Russian or Ukrainian based? Russian based.
BitCoin is what?
Slow something. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah, but yeah. Yes.
I'm just going to reinforce what you said about Coinbase, and potentially the reason why they might have trouble providing Bitcoin is that, from what I've heard, every time somebody suggests here's an easy way to get Bitcoin, is just go to Coinbase and get it there. So perhaps they're just selling more Bitcoin than they are US dollars.
Right. I mean, they do take a hefty percentage out of any Bitcoin that you buy or sell on there, because they know that they're the easiest way to buy or sell Bitcoin, and so they charge for that convenience. And so that's the reason why they've been able to expand their main float so far, but they're not the most transparent of Bitcoin companies. So, I mean, they're more transparent than Mt. Gox by far.
And when you say charge, that just means that they set the price differently.
No, they charge 1%. They charge 1% of every transaction. So every time you say you were to buy Bitcoin for $100, you give them $1 on top of that.
They're more expensive than like Bitstamp or Bitcoin, or about 2 or 3% more expensive.
Right.
So they buy from Bitstamp, then pay Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Jack the price of that.
Yeah, and so they do charge some of the convenience fee is built into the actual exchange price. And in addition to that, they have an actual 1% fee they tack on in addition to that. Every time you buy and every time you sell, they take 1%.
15-cent bank fee.
Plus the 50% bank fee. Yeah,
15 cents.
Yeah, plus the 15-cent bank fee, but that's the bank, so we'll keep you.
Are we moderately sure that NSA doesn't own some of these companies?
Yeah.
The question is, are we moderately sure that NSA doesn't own one of these companies? I mean, I'm sure I'm sure they have some access to the data of these companies. Whether or not they own the companies, I would doubt. But whether they own the data of the companies, well, that's likely. So that's another reason why you should really trust one central entity in Bitcoin, as long as it's nefarious. Are there any other questions or comments on this topic? I intentionally try to keep this brief. Yes?
I can confirm that blockchain.info is not owned by the government.
Good to know, yeah. We have the official blockchain. We have the official blockchain statement on file. So, yeah.
Eric's going to share a little bit about a product he's working on.
Okay.
Yeah, or whatever. Do you have any viruses?
Thank you.